Welcome back to today's Deep Dive, the first intelligence podcast. We hope you had the time to check out our other podcast, the Financial Intelligence Podcast. Let us know in the comments below. So let's get back to this deep dive. It is the 27th deep dive, and we are proud to share with you guys. Today is Tuesday, August 12th, 2025. I hope you already follow us on our YouTube channel, Next Site Intelligence, and also on Spotify. Look us up, Deep Dive Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to follow us and look up the Financial Deep Dive Intelligence. So let's take a look at today's intelligence report.
Okay, yeah. So today we're diving into a really rich source. It's a daily intelligence report. It comes from this fantastic intelligence company called Nextsite. Now, some of you might know them, but for anyone who doesn't, Nextsite really focuses on global intelligence. They've even built their own open source platform, Site Connect, which helps investigators all over the world.
That's right. And they put together these detailed intelligence reports for their customers, and they can even, tailor them to specific interests. You can definitely check them out at www.next-site.com to learn more.
Exactly. And this specific report we're unpacking today is the intelligence brief for Monday, August 11th, 2025. It gives a really good, concise, but still comprehensive snapshot of what's happening globally. Our job today is basically to break it down for you, pull out the key insights.
Right. And before we jump right in, it's probably worth mentioning how Nextsite helps us sort of gauge the information. They use these things called reliability confidence flags.
Yeah, those are super helpful. They give you a quick sense of how solid the information actually is. For this report, you'll mostly see a moderate threat level and then flags like B3 or C3.
Okay, so what do those mean?
Right, so Admiralty B means the info is coming from reliable news sources, official statements, and importantly, it's been cross-checked, corroborated. Pretty solid.
Okay.
Then Admiralty C means, okay, you still have multiple sources, but there might be a bit of uncertainty, maybe limited access to closed-door meetings or information that's not quite as direct.
I see. And the 3?
The confidence level 3 just reinforces that. It tells us that while, yes, a lot of this relies on public media, that rigorous cross-checking is key for reliability. The moderate confidence reflects that, some sources might not have full access to everything sensitive.
So bottom line, we're looking at carefully vetted information here, even if it's pulled from public sources. It's like having experts double-check the path.
Precisely. Guides through the information jungle, as you said.
Okay, let's get into the report itself then. What's the big picture, the BLUF bottom line up front for August 11th?
The BLUF is pretty wide-ranging. You've got everything from major security crackdowns in the U.S. to severe weather events and, unfortunately, serious humanitarian crises happening elsewhere.
And Nextsite pulls out some overarching themes from this.
They do. 3 main spotlight themes really emerge. First is global security versus civil liberties. Basically, how leaders are reacting to threats, often ramping up security, and what that means for individual freedoms.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, climate-driven crises. This just underlines the growing impact of, climate change on things like infrastructure, public health, really everywhere.
We're definitely seeing more of that.
And third, shifting geopolitical alliances. This looks at how countries are, changing partners, forming new economic plans, or reacting to conflicts around the world.
All right, themes identified. Let's dive into the regions. Where do we start? North America.
Let's do it. North America is definitely dynamic, as the report puts it. First up, President Trump deploying 800 National Guard troops to Washington, D.C., and essentially putting the city's police under federal control.
Wow. And the justification.
He cited a surge in violent crime. The interesting part is, local stats apparently show the opposite trend, that crime was falling. He used emergency provisions in the Home Rule Act, framing it as tackling lawlessness, gang violence. But critics, unsurprisingly, are calling it a political move, especially during a re-election campaign.
And the reliability flag on this one?
That's a B3. So reliable sources like major news outlets and official statements all corroborated.
Okay. And what about public reaction? People must have had thoughts.
Oh, absolutely. The report mentions #DeCunderSiege trending on X. And it was, as you'd expect, very polarized. You had some people saying, finally taking back our capital, and others calling it, authoritarian overreach, even martial law disguised as safety. Local forums apparently showed real fear about militarization.
Yeah, you can see how that would divide people. Anything else major in the U.S.?
Still on the crime theme, Trump also urged Congress to end no-cash bail policies nationwide. Again, part of this broader crackdown narrative that also have a B3 flag.
The argument being it keeps dangerous people off the streets.
That's his argument, yes, that it lets criminals go free. But again, critics argue it disproportionately affects certain communities based on race and economics and could balloon jail costs.
Okay, moving from security to markets. Something about gold tariffs.
Right, a bit of whiplash there. Trump announced gold imports won't face tariffs. This calmed the bullion markets because a customs ruling had hinted they might.
So he clarified that.
Yeah, a quick post on Truth Social. Gold will not be tariffed, which reversed the speculation. A White House official apparently indicated an executive order was coming to make it official. This one has a C3 flag. Multiple sources, but some uncertainty, likely because it was a fast-moving situation based initially on just a social media post before the formal order.
Makes sense. It shows how quickly things can change. And there was an explosion, too.
Yes, unfortunately. In Pennsylvania, multiple explosions at U.S. Steel's Clairton Coke works near Pittsburgh. Injured workers, shook homes, sparked search and rescue. The cause is still under investigation. This plant has a history of pollution issues, though. It's a major employer, around 1,300 workers, so disruptions could hit the regional steel supply. That carries a C3 flag.
Okay, now heading north. Canada's wildfires. Sounds bad.
It's really bad. The 2025 season is already their second worst ever recorded. Over 470 fires out of control, 7.3 million hectares burned. That's huge. This gets a B3 flag and a high threat level.
And climate change is the main driver here.
That's what scientists are pointing to. Prolonged dry spells, temperatures about 2.5 degrees Celsius above average. It's just extending the fire season. Tens of thousands evacuated. And the smoke is causing serious air quality problems down in the U.S. too. Big impacts on healthcare, insurance. It connects back to that climate-driven crises theme.
Definitely. Okay, let's move from the fires in Canada across the Atlantic to Europe. More environmental news there.
Yeah, but a really unusual one. A massive swarm of jellyfish actually forced a shutdown at France's Graveline's nuclear plant.
Jellyfish, serious.
Seriously. They clogged the seawater intake pipes used for cooling. EDF, the operator, had to shut down 4 reactors. This gets a B3 flag. The issue seems to be marine heat waves making jellyfish populations explode. EDF got them cleared out, but it really shows how climate change can throw a wrench into critical infrastructure in unexpected ways.
Wow. I saw you mention TikTok.
Yeah, apparently clips went viral mocking the nuclear jelly jam. It's funny, but like you said, it highlights the real vulnerability, humor masking a serious point.
Absolutely. Okay, shifting gears to geopolitics in Europe. The Trump-Putin summit.
Right. High stakes there. Berlin apparently scrambled to set up video calls with Trump, Zelensky, and other EU leaders. The goal was to prevent Trump from making concessions on Ukraine ahead of his planned meeting with Putin. This has a B3 flag and a high threat level.
What are the specific fears?
That Trump might agree to some kind of territory for ceasefire deal, basically sidelining the EU and undermining Ukraine. Obviously, huge implications for regional stability and energy markets, too.
And tied into that, the Belarusian opposition leader.
Yes, Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya. She warned that any deal Trump and Putin make must involve the EU and protect both Belarus and Ukraine. Her concern is that a bilateral deal could legitimize authoritarian regimes like Lukashenko's in Belarus and ignore regional players. This item has a C3 flag, likely reflecting her team as the primary source and the outcome being uncertain.
And alongside the diplomatic heat, literal heat.
Yeah, a major heat wave across southern and central Europe. Temperatures over 40 Celsius, sparking wildfires, forcing evacuations. Another B3 flag here, high threat level. Scientists are linking it directly to climate change, noting Europe's warming faster than average. It's causing agricultural losses, hitting tourism, straining power grids. Activists are using it to call out climate inaction. Europe is burning while leaders bicker about tariffs.
That's a powerful image. Okay, let's move further east to Asia. What's happening there?
A mix of things. Diplomatic friction first. China protested an art show in Bangkok.
An art show? What was the issue?
China accused it of promoting independence movements, specifically mentioning Tibet, Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and distorting Chinese policies. The foreign ministry basically told Thailand to shut it down. Thai authorities hadn't commented yet when this report came out. It gets a C3 flag, based mainly on the Chinese briefing. Could definitely strain relations, tourism.
Interesting how culture becomes political. What else? Natural disasters.
Yes, a significant earthquake in Turkey. 6.1 magnitude in Balıkesir province. Dozens injured, buildings damaged, major rescue effort. Turkey's on active fault lines, so this is an ongoing risk. This carries a B3 flag.
And related to that, Arrests.
Yes, following the quake, authorities detained the owner and constructor of a building that collapsed in northwest Turkey. Alleged negligence, not following regulations. Turkey's been trying to crack down on poor construction after past deadly quakes. This is a C3 flag.
Shifting to tech now. Indonesia and AI.
Yeah, quite forward-looking.
Yeah.
Their National AI Task Force proposed creating a sovereign AI fund. The idea is to finance AI development and attract global partners. The white paper suggests starting with maybe $1 or $2 billion US. Indonesia clearly wants to be a regional AI player. This has B3 flag based on that official paper.
And sticking with big economic powers, U.S. China tariffs.
A bit of waiting game there. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said President Trump hasn't decided yet whether to slap tariffs on China for buying Russian oil. This is interesting because India is already facing a 50% tariff for doing the same thing. Vance suggested they're weighing the complex economic ties, trying to avoid unintended consequences. A decision here could really impact global oil prices. This gets a C3 flag.
Lots of balancing acts there. Okay, let's turn to the Middle East. The situation in Gaza sounds extremely tense.
It is. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu publicly defended his plan to seize Gaza City and other remaining areas, despite huge protests at home and international criticism. He claims it's necessary to destroy Hamas. Critics, including hostage families in Israel, say it'll just deepen the humanitarian crisis and endanger the hostages. This has a C3 flag and a high threat level, specifically tagged for humanitarian crisis.
And the military actions following that statement.
Intense. The report details the heaviest bombardment in weeks on eastern Gaza City suburbs like Sabra and Zaytun. Tragically, it mentions 6 journalists were killed in a strike near Al-Shifa Hospital, including an Al Jazeera correspondent. This gets a C3 flag too, but with a very high threat level, especially concerning attacks on journalists. The strikes damaged infrastructure, and aid agencies are warning about funding cuts if journalists' safety isn't ensured. Germany apparently even halted military equipment exports to Israel over this.
And the social media aspect, you mentioned protests.
Yes, videos were circulating showing Israeli police breaking up protests in Tel Aviv, hostage families posting desperate pleas online, pro-Palestinian activists accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing, social media just amplifying everything, hardening positions, and potentially influencing aid decisions globally. It's a huge factor.
And the offensive might expand further.
That's the indication. Reports suggest Israel plans to move into central Gaza camps and even the Mawasi humanitarian zone, where most of Gaza's population is now crammed. This would involve mobilizing more reservists, intensifying bombing, despite these supposed safe zones being totally ill-equipped. The UN is warning of famine. European allies are urging restraint. It's grim. Another C3 flag, very high threat level.
A truly dire situation. Let's move continent now to Africa. What's the picture there?
A real mix: security operations, legal cases, political tension. In Nigeria, the military reported killing scores of bandits in Zamfara state. It was apparently a preemptive strike against a gang preparing to attack a village. Joint air and ground op.
Was this confirmed?
Yes, this has a B3 flag based on Nigerian Air Force statements. They reported killing several leaders and fighters. These gangs are notorious for kidnapping for ransom, disrupting agriculture. Public reaction online seems supportive of the military, our heroes, but there were also some comments raising human rights concerns about the suspects.
Also in Nigeria, a court case.
Yes, the arraignment of 5 men accused in that horrific 2022 Auro Catholic Church massacre. They appeared in federal court, pleaded not guilty. They're facing terrorism charges. Prosecutors allege links to al-Shabaab, though that's often debated. It's a high-profile trial. This carries a B3 flag.
Political instability elsewhere?
Mali. Yeah, reports of over 30 soldiers and officials arrested in Mali, allegedly plotting against the ruling junta. Details are scarce, citing sensitivity. This comes after the junta extended its own term and banned political parties, leading to protests. This gets the C3 flag at a high threat level. Rumors of a coup attempt were apparently spreading on WhatsApp, showing how quickly misinformation can destabilize things.
And in South Africa, trade tensions with the U.S.
Right. The leader of the opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, warned that a potential 30% U.S. tariff on South African goods might be linked to South Africa's domestic race-based policies, like affirmative action.
Linking trade to domestic policy.
That's the claim. Steenhuisen framed it as the U.S. potentially interfering with South Africa's sovereignty and transformation goals. If those tariffs stick, key exports like citrus, wine, cars could really suffer. This is a C3 flag, reflecting the ongoing uncertain nature of these trade talks.
Okay, crossing the Atlantic one more time to Latin America, what stands out there?
Political purges, economic issues, infrastructure problems. Quite a range. In Nicaragua, Vice President Rosario Murillo reportedly ordered the arrest of a historic Sandinista figure, Bayardo Arce, and others. It's being seen as a purge, consolidating her power as she eyes succession.
That sounds serious.
It is. Analysts see it as eliminating rivals. Dissidents are using hashtags like #MurilloPurge online. It definitely risks more international sanctions. The report gives this a C3 flag and a high threat level for authoritarianism.
On the economic front, Venezuela and Chevron.
A bit of cautious optimism there, maybe. Chevron's return under a specific U.S. license is expected to boost Venezuelan oil production back up towards 1.2 million barrels per day. That's a B3 flag.
But there's a catch.
A big one. Chevron can export the oil, but the payments have to go into special escrow accounts that the state oil company, PDVSA, can't access directly.
So yeah, it might help GDP a bit, but it severely limits the cash flow for the Venezuelan government. People were joking online, we'll have oil but no cash. Really highlights the ongoing hardship.
Infrastructure issues, too. Mexico City.
Yes. Severe flooding there exposed. Yet again, chronic problems with the city's water drainage system. Experts are saying it's not just heavy rain, not Krolak's fault, referencing the Aztec rain god. It's outdated pipes, illegal settlements, blocking drainage, lack of investment, corruption. The usual suspects, unfortunately. Huge economic losses from these annual floods. That's a B3 flag.
Tragic news from Colombia as well.
Yes, sadly. Senator Miguel Uribe died in hospital. He'd been shot 2 months earlier in an assassination attempt. He was a prominent critic of leftist policies. The motive's still under investigation, possibly organized crime. This carries a C3 flag and a high threat level due to political violence. Colombians were mourning online, expressing fears of more violence. And finally, in Latam, Brazil, and Braskem.
A potential deal falling through. Businessman Nelson Tanier might abandon his bid to buy the petrochemical giant Braskem. The sticking point seems to be unresolved liabilities from a massive mining disaster back in 2018 that caused land subsidence. Braskem faces billions in claims. Without clarity on those liabilities, getting financing for the takeover is risky. Braskem's shares dropped on the uncertainty. This is a B3 flag.
Okay, one last region. Let's wrap up with Oceania Pacific.
Right. Diplomatic shifts and trade are the main themes here. Big news from Australia. Prime Minister Albanese announced Australia will recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September.
That's a significant policy shift.
It is. Albanese cited Israel's conduct in Gaza and settlement activity as undermining peace prospects. It aligns Australia with countries like Ireland and Norway who've recently done the same. Jewish Australian groups criticize the move, naturally. Could affect defense and trade ties with Israel. Social media down under was very divided. This carries a C3 flag, reflecting the future nature and uncertain full impact.
And New Zealand might follow suit.
It looks that way. Foreign Minister Winston Peters said recognizing Palestine is a matter of when, not if, and they'll discuss it during UN Leaders Week. They're weighing it carefully, wanting it to contribute to peace, not just, empower Hamas. Australia's move definitely adds pressure. Again, a C3 flag here.
Trade issues for New Zealand, too, with the U.S.
Yes. Prime Minister Luxon said he doesn't expect the U.S. to lift the 15% tariff on New Zealand exports anytime soon, despite lobbying. Seems like it's just part of the broader Trump protectionist agenda. No positive signals from the White House. Bad news for Kiwi exporters. This also gets a C3 flag. People online, especially farmers, were apparently posting memes about 15% less income. Shows how these tariffs hit home.
And a business deal in NZ.
Yeah. Spark New Zealand, the big telco, sold a 75% stake in its data center business to a private equity firm, Pacific Equity Partners. It's a deal worth up to NZ $705 million. Let Spark focus on its main telecom business, while the equity firm plans to expand the data centers. That's a B3 flag.
Okay, that covers the regions. Now, the really fascinating part, how Next Site connects these dots, the correlational analysis.
Exactly. This is where you see the ripple effects. They don't just list events. They show potential influences. For example, security measures versus markets. That crackdown in D.C. and the talk about ending no cash bail, it coincided with a small 1% dip in U.S. municipal bond indices. Investors may be pricing in higher public safety costs.
Interesting. And the opposite elsewhere.
Sort of. In Nigeria, those reported military successes against bandits saw the naira strengthen slightly. Markets perceived a reduced kidnapping risk, however small.
And the climate connection to markets.
Very clear. The heat wave in Europe and the fires in Canada, they pushed European day-ahead power prices up 14%. Wheat futures also rose on worries about Canadian harvests, and even those jellyfish in France. That nuclear outage added volatility to European electricity contracts. Shows how interconnected energy markets are to climate events.
What about oil and geopolitics?
Still tightly linked. Chevron's limited return to Venezuela, plus the uncertainty around potential U.S. tariffs on China buying Russian oil that kept Brent crude prices elevated, above U.S. $88 a barrel. And Israel's escalating offensive in Gaza added a risk premium to Middle Eastern oil, though maybe offset slightly by things like Indonesia's AI diversification plans signaling broader economic shifts.
And the diplomatic moves, like recognizing Palestine.
Had market effects, too. Australia's announcement triggered about a 5% drop in the Sydney shares of defense contractors with links to Israel. You also saw a slight uptick in Middle Eastern sovereign bond yields. Markets react fast to these signals.
Finally, authoritarianism and money flows.
Yes, the purge in Nicaragua, the instability reported in Mali, these coincided with capital moving out of those countries' sovereign bonds. Investors shifted to perceived safer assets in Latin America. And significantly, human rights concerns were noted as influencing ESG environmental social governance investment funds, a clear link between political risk and where money goes.
That analysis really ties it all together. So, based on all this, what does the report recommend for decision makers? What are the takeaways?
It boils down to being proactive and strategic. These aren't just news items. They have real-world implications that require responses.
So, for instance, if you're a chief financial officer,
You should be looking at your U.S. municipal bond holdings, especially given that D.C. situation. Assess your exposure if federalized policing or bail reform ends up increasing local or state budget needs.
and for operations, a COO.
Definitely need climate resilience strategies, especially for operations in Europe and North America. Contingency plans for extreme heat, wildfires, even jellyfish swarms, apparently.
Right. And for security professionals, chief
Yeah.
security officers.
They need to be doing diplomatic risk assessments. What does Australia or New Zealand recognizing Palestine mean for regional partnerships or supply chains? Same for monitoring security in places like Zamfara in Nigeria. How does that impact logistics or personnel safety?
So it's about understanding exposure and hedging.
Exactly. Understand the political risks, the environmental risks, and where possible, diversify or plan accordingly.
Wow. This deep dive into the next site brief really does show how complex and well-connected everything is. Security in D.C., climate change hitting Canada and France, geopolitics shifting with Palestine recognition, even online sentiment. It all ripples outwards.
It really does. And what strikes me is how putting all this information together, analyzing it carefully like Nexite does, turns it from just noise, just headlines, into something strategic. It becomes a landscape you can navigate, something that actually guides decisions and shows you the deeper currents shaping the world.
Absolutely. As you listen to this, think about those connections. A jellyfish swarm, wildfires, a political purge. They seem totally separate, but they're all part of this bigger global picture. Seeing those links, not just the individual stories, that's the real challenge and the opportunity. Do not forget to follow us on YouTube and Spotify. Also like, share, and comment. We do look forward to hearing your opinion. This is it for today. Enjoy the rest of Tuesday.